You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hello. How are you? Okay, so y'all know I'm taking this class at Stanford and I'm trying to pass along the information that I find super interesting, which actually is like everything in this class. I am trying to pass this on to you. And I'm trying to do it in an entertaining way, but I'm kind of feeling a little self-conscious because I don't know if I'm succeeding at that or not. It's a little bit of a departed style. Normally, I'm trying to explain things and I just riff and tell you, give you a pep talk and encouragement, which I think is so needed. But these kinds of podcasts are a little bit more research-based. But I think that's important, right? Because we want to know the latest research on what's going on in our home. And I think the research empowers us to make really great decisions about our future. So as I've said before, most of these podcasts are typically all about you. I don't really venture into the pool of addiction research. But I'm going to do that in the next couple podcasts just because I think you feel crazy. You feel like you live in another planet when you love someone struggling with addiction. Your struggles are so much different from like the neighbor across the street who's struggling on how to pack lunches, healthy lunches for her, elementary school kid. Like for those of you that have elementary school kids, I get it. That's still a struggle. But there's also very real and really painful things going on in your house that you're struggling with. Like, is your loved one coming home tonight sober? What's your bank account look like? How much drugs and drinking is that costing you financially? Are they lying again? Are they letting you down again? Did they break their promise to stay sober again? Are they having an affair? Are they addicted to pornography? And, are they wanting to be intimate when you're like disgusted and not interested anymore? Should you tell their parents or your parents? Do people judge you? Like, it's exhausting. I remember going to so many birthday parties on Saturday mornings and looking around at the women and parents that were there at the birthday parties with the kids and thinking, of course, my husband was passed out in bed from drinking the night before. And I remember thinking, these people have no idea that right now my husband is probably laying on the couch, might have a nosebleed from the cocaine he just did. And if they only knew. And here's where addiction is super duper tricky, because addiction wants you to believe that. Addiction wants to isolate you, make you feel bad, make you feel ashamed, make you feel embarrassed, and make you feel like you can't share. But when I finally realized those were all manipulative lies that addiction tries to use to keep power over you, and I actually started using my voice and not giving a hoot about what people thought of me or my life, and I started sharing, I love a guy who's, most of the time not sober. I've got 3 kids with them. I'm trying to make my life work. And it feels like it's about to fall apart every 5 minutes. As soon as I actually said that out loud to people, people were like, oh, me too. Or my dad did that. Or my brother has an addiction. Or I have an addiction. It's amazing that if I were to go back in time thinking about standing in that birthday party room with all those kids and all those adults, if I had just grabbed a mic and gotten on a table, stood up and said, I struggle in my family with addiction. Raise your hand if you do too. That a bunch of hands would go up. Like a bunch of those men that were at that birthday party were they at the stage of addiction that my husband was in? No. Were they at an earlier stage where they were really looking forward to getting wasted that night with their buddies at the bar? Yeah. Like a lot of hands would go up. This is a really big worldwide issue. And if we just start talking and sharing, I think addiction would lose a lot of its power. So today, what are we talking about? All right, I'm learning about 3 different reasons why people are more prone to addiction than others. And I touched on a little bit about this earlier in another podcast. But this one we're going to go into 3 major theories, okay? I find this fascinating, and I think you will too, because don't you wonder why? Like, I have drinks, and I don't crave more. Like, I am 2, and I'm good to go. I'm actually down to 1 because I'm getting old. But, like, I don't sit there during the week and think, okay, when am I going to have a drink? I don't crave or think about drugs or I don't actually even like the idea of not being in control. Surprise, surprise. But how come the man that I love did? Like, we went to high school together. I've known him for forever. Why are we so different? He grew up with, a good family. His sisters are super accomplished. One is a valedictorian of Vanderbilt. They all went to Vanderbilt. Like, why did this happen? And why does this disease happen to really good people? Why does this? Now, not everyone is a good person who struggles with addiction. Some of them are very bad people, or addiction has turned them into very bad people who do very bad things. So it's not a blanket statement that we can apply to everyone. But like, why? Why does somebody have a sip of alcohol and all of a sudden, at the age of 12, crave more? I'm going to answer that question because aren't you curious? I am, right? Because if we understand how it happened, we can say to ourselves, all right, well, I have nothing to do with this. My love is not going to get them sober. And no matter how great of a partner I am, no matter how clean I keep the house or how organized I am or how wonderful I tell them they are, or how much I nag them or guilt them or, obsess about them, is not going to change because this doesn't have anything to do with me. I can literally give back this problem of addiction to the rightful owner. Okay? I think this podcast is going to help you do that. All right. So 3 reasons, and I've got my notes in front of me. I'm going to try not to read from them too much because I think that becomes boring. But, all right. First reason why, and this is all scientifically backed, but I'm not going to go into the science of it because I do think that, I'm sorry for all of you people who love science out there. I love you for loving science. So I'm just going to give you high level because I've been down going really, really deep in this class and it's a lot. My brain hurts afterwards. Okay. So first reason is nature. Okay. And so nature is basically a very simple way of saying genetics. There's even a word called epigenetics, but we're not going to talk about that. Basically, it says that genetic studies have attempted to map and characterize genetic vulnerability to addiction. And research suggests that some of the genes involved may be linked to personality traits. Okay, so think about this. You got a person standing in front of you, and they have genes inside of them. And some of the people that have specific genes are more prone to addiction. Now, what genes may be involved? Well, impulsivity. That's a gene. So if you are dealing with a child that has, like, let's say, very impulsive behavior, I know I have one kid that does that, who kind of does before he thinks. And it, an example of this that I can think of was I used to live in a city, and my office was like right by a very busy road. And there was 2 kids that graduated high school and got out of class early. They were both driving cars. One kid had just got a brand new sports car, and the other kid had a sports car. And this road, was like a very busy road, lots of pedestrians, but it was a straightaway. And there wasn't a lot of traffic on it, even though there was pedestrians on it. And these 2 boys got in their separate cars and they raced down the street. And unfortunately, very tragically, they hit a mom and a baby crossing the road. And they killed the baby and the mother. One of the kids did. Now, this is an 18-year-old boy who was doing something incredibly impulsive, which is race his friends. Did he mean to kill a mother and child? Of course not. But he is spending the rest of his life in jail for manslaughter. And it is a tragic of obviously the mother and child, and for the children and the parents, and just a tragedy all around for everyone. But that's an act of impulsivity, right? He did it before thinking through, I might kill somebody. I'm breaking the law by going above the speed limit. So people who are impulsive, that's a gene that's been identified, and they are more prone to addiction. Another gene that may be linked to addiction is people who take risks. So I remember watching a 60 Minutes episode where there was a guy who has like a little suit, like a weird rubber suit that was sort of shaped like a bird. And he would jump off cliffs without any like suspension or ties back to the cliff, and he'd fly. Now, I looked at that and thought, wow, I could never do that in a million years. Couldn't even imagine bungee jumping or I don't like putting myself in high risk situations. But this man spent his entire life seeking out very high risk situations. That is very unusual, right? Those types of people, this has been identified as a gene, are more prone to addiction. Another one that's been perhaps linked to addiction is people who habitually, and that's the key word here, habitually seek new experiences. So this might be a person who never likes to sit still, or likes to move often, or is never happy with one job and wants to do another job, wants to travel a lot, wants new cars a lot. Just there's a lot of change in this person's life. There's a lot of new, whether it's experiences driving a new car or experiences living in a new home or with a job or whatever. Just they're constantly changing. That seems to be something that correlates with addiction. And let's see if there's anyone else. So that's pretty much, that's more nature, because nature is genetics. And so also another group of people that seem to be prone to addiction are people with co-occurring mental illnesses. And when we say, I don't like the word, I don't know about you guys, but mental illness, I don't love that. I know it's appropriate and I get it, but it just makes me feel bad when I call people that suffer from depression or anxiety and mental illness. And I'm one of those people, but I don't love that. Wish we'd come up with a new thing for that. But anyways, so people that struggle with mental illnesses have an increased risk of addiction. So this is attention deficit disorder. I have a child with this that's been diagnosed with this. They are more at risk. Mood disorders. They are more at risk with addiction, mood disorders, anxiety, depression. And they seem to struggle with addiction more than people who don't. Also, lastly, under the nature category is people who have early childhood trauma. They are more at risk of developing addiction. Now, I know we talked about this and we said, look, self-medication, we talked about this in the earlier podcast, there's not a lot of scientific proof that self-medication for childhood trauma is the reason why someone becomes addicted, you guys. Sorry about that. So you're probably like, wait, what? I thought you said self-medication is not a reason why someone becomes addicted. It's not, right? So self-medication doesn't work. But this is saying that if your person you love experiences early childhood trauma, it actually can influence a gene expression. And this is what we call epigenetics. It can influence a gene expression. And I'm going to just read because they say it so much better than I do. A traumatic event in early childhood, for example, can turn certain genes on or off, thereby creating vulnerability for addiction that may not have been expressed were it not for the trauma. Other risk factors during adolescence that increase the risk of addiction include pressure from peers to experiment with substances and social networks where substance use is commonplace. Okay, so this is basically saying you have the gene there, but a traumatic experience flips the switch of addiction to on, and that can make you that can cause addiction. Does that make sense? Okay, so that is called nature. And basically nature is just a plain way of saying genes, the stuff that lives inside you, inside your body, can cause you to be more prone to addiction. That's reason number one. Reason number two is called nurture. So some of you guys have heard nature versus nurture, right? It's like a big debate in the scientific community. Well, we in the addiction world think it's nature and or nurture. And then one more, which we'll get to. So what is nurture? What do I mean by nurture? Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. Oh, I told you guys last week that we just got done with my daughter's high school graduation, and I had 16 people like hanging out with me for several days, and I was entertaining them at my house, and I'm losing my mind. I've lost it. I apologize. Please bear with me because I'm also trying to work while doing this. What I just described to you, the epigenetics, is nature. And for those of you, nurture. Oh, God. Maybe I should start over again. Okay. Nature is the co-occurring mental illness, and the genetics, which is the impulsivity and habitually seeking new experiences. Nurture is what I just described, and I apologize. Nurture is the early childhood experiences that can influence the gene expression, which is epigenetics. I apologize. That is nurture. So that is environmental. That's outside your body. I apologize so much. Please forgive me. So what do I mean by that? I'm saying the outside circumstance, your childhood experience, your family, your environment can cause a vulnerability to addiction. All right? Are we good? If you're not good, please write in and let me know to Lori, and I will go over this again, but hopefully you guys get it. Whew, Lord. Okay. So then the third theory, which is much easier, is called neighborhood. Okay. So neighborhood is the third reason why people can have can be vulnerable to addiction. And this is simple access to the drug. So when you go outside your door, how easily accessible are drugs and alcohol? Like if your loved one was living with a parent who was struggling with addiction and there was beer all over the house and in the fridge, and that's a very easy way to get access to an addictive substance. And that could be a vulnerability to addiction. If your loved one surrounded themselves with a group of people, which they often do, who also struggle with addiction, it can be very easy for them to get access to drugs and alcohol. I know a lot of you, myself included, sometimes would take, my husband's phone and look for his drug dealer's numbers, because that if you eliminate the drug dealer, then you eliminate the access to the drug, which makes it therefore harder to become addicted. And this I found absolutely fascinating, because we learned about in Prohibition how actually the rates of addiction significantly reduced. And even when alcohol came back in, was allowed legally to come back into the society, rates of liver disease and health-related issues with the stem from addiction were down even years after alcoholism had been legalized, because everybody was, a lot of people were dry. They were limited. They had such limited access for that long. So if you think about that in today's way, when we talk about the legalization of marijuana, there's a lot of organizations that are now trying to get, a lot of drugs easily accessible, according to the data and the science that I'm learning in the Stanford class. It actually is the opposite. The more accessible the drugs or alcohol, the higher the rate of addiction. And I had heard that during Prohibition, people were still drinking. It didn't have any effect. And that is actually not the case. I read the science about it, and it was actually incredible. So if you look at another thing we learned about, like the rates of addiction in Bangladesh, which apparently is a Muslim community, it is like you need a permit to drink or consume or purchase alcohol. And the rates of addiction are incredibly low, like crazy low, which makes the case why addiction becomes an issue for people who have it easily accessible. So when you say, well, Michelle, this makes the case of why I need to get rid of all the alcohol in my house. Look, I hear you. I mean, I got rid of all the alcohol in my house, but if your loved one can get in a car and drive to a local community store, an ABC store, it's still easily accessible, right? I remember my loved one lost his license from too many DUIs, so he drove my daughter's pink bicycle to the convenience store to go get alcohol. And it was a hike. I mean, it wasn't like just down the street, which we can laugh at now because, look, if we lost our sense of humor, we've lost everything. We got to laugh sometimes about the silly, crazy things that happen with this disease. So yeah, that's still easily accessible. So look around your neighborhood. It was not lost on me the fact that when I moved to Boston, we lived literally on top of a liquor store. Like, yeah, wasn't a good choice, Michelle, but it doesn't matter because he could have walked 3 more blocks and gotten access to another liquor store. So yeah, I think this is the three reasons why people are more susceptible to addiction than others are: number 1, nature; number 2, nurture; and number 3, neighborhood. 3 N's. And hopefully I didn't get you too confused on those. I apologize. Here's what I'm going to promise you. I'm not going to record another episode. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to get my schedule straight and organized again, and then I will come back and be far more organized on this podcast. But hopefully you got at least one or two takeaways from this. And I'm sure that we're going to be talking about all of this stuff again. All right. I love you. You've got this. What is the overall arching point? It's the exact same as what I said the last podcast. If there's a mega takeaway here, it is that, my love, you have nothing to do with this addiction. You didn't cause it, and you cannot cure it. That is an incredibly valuable lesson that they say in AA to loved ones of addiction, and I think it is so true. You didn't cause it, and you cannot cure it. It is up to your loved one to learn all of this information, to process this information, and to understand themselves why they got here, and then how they can change that. Because this isn't the end of the story. This doesn't have to be you're screwed and there's nothing you can do about this, so good luck to you, so long, farewell. This can have a happy ending. You understanding why this happens to you is super important to getting sober. And one of the things that I have absolutely found incredibly inspiring is this course that I'm taking. It's online due to the corona. And I'm taking classwork with people from all over the world, including at least 3 fellow students who actually struggled with addiction themselves. And they're just really curious about, why did this happen to me? And I find that so darn inspiring, because if you understand how it happened, isn't that incredibly powerful to understand how to prevent it happening, or at least recognizing these old patterns and knowing, okay, this is not my fault. I was not born a bad person, unable to make really smart decisions for myself. Quite the contrary. A lot of people we love struggling with addiction are very gifted people. I know my ex-husband had more potential in his pinky than I did in my entire body. There was nothing that guy could not do. He was charismatic, he was funny, he was good looking, he was the captain of the soccer team, and he could fly fish, and he was my math tutor. I mean, good Lord, that he was so gifted. And I really admired him and respected him. And so was he born deficient, bad, unhealthy? Absolutely not. Was he born without the power to exercise choices? No. But did he want to choose to get sober badly enough? I don't know. Was he equipped with all of the tools to be able to consistently choose sobriety? I don't know. And it's not my job to sit here and figure out why he never chose to get sober. I tried that for 10 years and that did nothing for me. Trust me, I tried. I know you did too. But what I had to end up doing was sit there and go, okay, I don't see this getting any better. Like, if I really write down, I see this actually progressively getting worse, because addiction is a progressive disease. If they don't get sober, it doesn't get better, guys. It gets worse. The drinking becomes worse. The substance becomes more serious. And the risks they take, the consequences are even greater, right? It becomes a health risk. It becomes, a financial risk. It ruins communities. And so what I did was sit there and go, okay, what is the truth? What are the facts? The facts are that he never used to have to spend the night away from me, like getting drunk in a hotel room. That's not the case when we first fell in love and got married and moved in together. Like, no, that actually happened 7 years into our relationship. When I first met him, he would have to drink occasionally, get drunk like once every 2 weeks. He could go for long periods of time not drinking. But it, again, got worse and worse and worse. And so I thought to myself, all right, I've got 3 kids. I don't want them growing up with this. And also, where do I see myself 5 years from now? Like, in 5 years, if this is how bad it is now, What is it going to look like in 5 years? How much longer am I willing to wake up every day going, today might be the day that he gets sober. Today might be the day that our family works. Today might be the day where everything changes and he looks me in the eye with clear eyes and says, I love you. I love our kids. I want this. I want to be here for you. And you guys are worth me getting sober for. Because every day I woke up with that for 10 years, with that hope in mind. And I went to bed thinking when it didn't happen, okay, maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow never came. And if I got honest, it was getting less and less hopeful that things were gonna get better. So I had to make a choice for myself and for my kids based on the facts. And the facts told me this was not going to turn out well. The chances of him getting sober are already incredibly small for long-term sobriety. So how much am I willing to risk and invest in my life to bank on the fact that to gamble my life, my kid's life, on winning in this small percentage? And so for me, and I don't sit there and preach leaving is the only answer. I never will do that. For me, though, leaving was the right answer. And I finally left and said, okay, enough is enough. I'm headed out. I fell out of love with him, thankfully, because I had been waiting for that day to happen forever, because that was the reason why I didn't leave, was because I did that hope. I was holding on to hope. And once you lose hope, it's so much easier to leave because you're like, yeah, I get it. I get that this isn't going to change. And if this is my reality, if this is what I'm dealing with for 5 years, I am out. Because I can't do this for much longer. And so I left. And I don't ever regret it because I was right. And I very quickly realized that I was the glue. And I don't say this in like an egotistical way, I promise. But I very quickly realized I am not the glue. I was the glue that was holding our family together. And if you remove me and you take the kids out of the picture and there's no accountability for him, life goes downhill fast. And, he deteriorated pretty quickly. Even though there was another woman that came into the picture who I love and adore and very much tried to save him too. And then she quickly realized, I can't do this either. This is not healthy for me and needed to go. So, yeah. And I actually could see other people in addition to her getting involved with him because they'd always end up calling me and saying, okay, what's going on and what happens and what are we dealing with? And I never got involved because, on a daily basis or anything, because it's, you cannot save somebody who cannot save themselves. Like, you cannot do it. You can throw as many not buoys. What are those round things on boats? Not life preservers. Oh my gosh. You guys, I'm losing my mind. Whatever. Those round things. Floaties. It's killing you. You're probably saying it to me right now out loud. Not life preservers. Ugh, whatever. It will come to me as soon as I stop this podcast. But you can throw 5, 8, 10, 15 of those things out in the water. And if they don't want to grab them and hang on, they're going to drown. And they don't have to. And it's not up to you. You can scream out of the side of the boat and be like, grab on. It's going to be okay. I love you. Just grab on. We could do this together. And you mean it because of your sweet, loving heart. But you cannot force somebody. And they might grab on for a minute. And you might feel relieved and start pulling them to the boat. And then they might let go again. And then you might try the effort of throwing more out there and convincing them to grab on. Darn it, I wish I could know what this thing is. But anyways, and you can't. You can't, sweet pea, and it's not your job. It is not your job. Your job is to throw the darn thing out there, walk away, go to the front of the ship and steer your ship in your direction that you choose to go, and hope and pray that they hold on and hang on and eventually join you on your ride. But they might not. And if so, you're still working towards getting to your destination. You're keeping your eyes forward on the future. You're steering your boat in the direction you want to go. You are not anchoring in too rough waters. You're not pausing your ride to make sure that they catch on. You're not refusing to move forward and go in the direction you should go, hoping and praying that if you just wait and anchor one more day, that they'll get the picture, right? You're not waiting for them to reach their rock bottom to continue. You've got to continue. You've got to move on and keep moving forward, because you too can get stuck. And you too can become addicted to addiction. And you can become addicted to thinking that your whole life's purpose is saving them. And unfortunately, when you do that, you lose your life. You lose yourself, because your entire identity is wrapped up in trying to figure out how to get them on the boat with you. And here's the other lie that addiction wants you to believe: that you need them on the boat. And I know that's a very bold statement to make, but you don't need them on your boat to get to your destination. They are not your captain. You are the captain. And you are the strong and sober and steady one. And you know what direction you need to go in. And you have a clear picture of where you want to go. And if you don't, get one. Figure yourself out to know, where the heck do you want to go? Where do you want to live? Where do you want your kids to go to school? Where do you want to do for employment? Where do you want to do for your savings? What do you want to do for your wellness? What do you want to do with your relationships with people? What brings you joy? How do you want to take care of yourself? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Those are very wonderful questions to start with. And a lot of times we forget asking them because we're too obsessed with our loved one who we think is drowning next to the boat. And it's very sad. I know. I get it. It is incredibly devastating and heartbreaking when you are offering that damn round thing, I don't remember, and they're not grabbing on. Like, it's heartbreaking because you're like, come on, I'm here. I'm living a good life. Just join me. For the love of God, join me. Just get on the ship. I will take care of everything else. All you have to do is choose sobriety and get on the ship with me. And we can go off together. And you want nothing more than that. And you've paused your entire life waiting for that. It is devastating. And it doesn't make sense why they can't do this, or why they won't do this, or why they continue to fail and let go. I don't understand it. I'm trying to help you understand where this stems from. But it doesn't make sense because it's not logical. This disease is not logical. As much as we want to apply science to it, and I believe in that, and as much as we want to dedicate psychology to it, and I believe in that too, there is always going to be mystery in your specific situation. And you just have to understand and accept that you won't have all of this figured out, and it won't all click. It won't all make logical and emotional sense to you. And if you're waiting for that day to make the ultimate decision, you're going to probably be waiting a very long time. So it is devastating and heartbreaking. And it is super frustrating, and I get it. But you are going to have to do your work on you and give up and surrender the idea that you have any serious, substantial influence over whether your loved one gets in the boat or not, whether they decide to join you in this ride of your life. You have to pull up the anchor of your boat, have courage to continue on with or without them. It's the truth. And I know that it really hurts to think of a life without them. I know that scares the heck out of you. But that's why I'm here. I'm here to lovingly remind you that you are more capable than you give yourself credit for. You've believed addiction, and you've allowed addiction to lower yourself, to ruin, to crush your self-esteem. And we got to build that back up. We got to remind you that you've got everything that it takes within you. You don't need to do some radical anything to change. You got it all in there, all of it. Not only do you have everything in there to be happy, to be successful, to live that life that you secretly fantasize about. Not only do you already have it in there, but you absolutely have everything within your power to make someone incredibly happy. Now, I'm going on a little bit on a limb here, so please forgive me, but I think it should be stated that maybe the person that you're in a relationship with doesn't appreciate you, see you, or love you like you need to be loved. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I think there is someone out there that can do that for you. I do. Now, do I think they're just going to plop up into your lap? No. Do I think that you would even be able to handle it or appreciate it or realize that person if you haven't done your own work? No. Do I think, though, that there are billions of people and that there is a potential for another human being out there to really give you that partner that will see how just freaking beautiful and wonderful and special that you are? And yeah, I do. I do, because I think it can happen for you. And I think you should entertain the idea that maybe they are out there and that maybe there is a relationship that can be very healing and loving for you out there eventually. I don't think you should run into the arms of somebody else, because that's avoiding your work that you need to do. But I think I've heard many women in our community who have left after doing tons of work, remarried, and found a wonderful man. And I'm thinking of some very specific women that I know, including myself. So it can be done. It can be done. So dare to dream of a relationship that feels really good and soft and safe and healing, because that's a possibility for you. It might not be with the person you're with today, but it could be out there. So just consider it. Just consider it. That's all. Just dare to dream. Dare to have hope in something other than sobriety. All right, that's it for me today. Talk to you later. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.